enveloped my entire body, pretty much my entire chest, my entire torso. It was all red and bumpy. And then I had a lot of spots on my upper left chin and also on my face in general. So it was pretty bad during that vegan experiment. And then after the vegan diet, hey everyone, thanks for tuning in and welcome back to another Sunday Q&A. Steven here with Team Euphoric, and today's question is with regard to seborrheic dermatitis while on the carnivore diet. Last year, I had uploaded a video on results that I personally saw from implementing the carnivore diet, and on that video, I received a comment from Leesus Sphinx. And Leesus says, "Man, I have seborrheic dermatitis around my eyes and hip, spread to my feet also. Now, I am gonna cut out grains. Thought I was eating healthy, definitely gonna try this diet. I thought red meat caused my IBS." Seborrheic dermatitis is something that often gets brought up in these different carnivore groups. I was actually browsing on Facebook, and there have been multiple people asking about seborrheic dermatitis and if the carnivore diet can help. And there was one user in the World Carnivore Tribe that actually asked this similar question. And it says, "New member here. One of the reasons for me trying carnivore is for the skincare benefits. I have been doing keto for a long time, so I'm transitioning to carnivore. I'm doing ketovore for 30 days to see how it goes, eating 90 to 95% carne. I love avocados and the occasional handful of berries. Then we'll be considering a full switch. Currently in this group for education and inspiration. My question is, how did carnivore affect your skin? I have a lot of acne scars and blackheads, and my hairline gets very irritated from seborrheic dermatitis. Has anyone here had carnivore heal their skin problems? Any photos would be helpful." Well, with regard to seborrheic dermatitis is actually something that I have had for multiple years, and it has to do with my diagnosis when I got diagnosed with ulcerative colitis. A lot of times, people that get diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, they will also develop either sinusitis and also seborrheic dermatitis, and I ended up getting both of those. But with regard to seborrheic dermatitis, if you're not familiar with what exactly that is, if we were to take a look at the word dermatitis and break it down, if we look at the root word, which is dermat is the Greek word for skin or pertaining to the skin. And then if we look at the suffix itis refers to inflammation. So seborrheic dermatitis is inflammation of the skin. Now, with regard to seborrheic dermatitis, it is a very common skin condition. And exactly what happens when you get it? Well, you'll develop some itchy rashes, you can develop some flaky scales, and you could also get a lot of redness on your body, which can be very uncomfortable. And in terms of what exactly causes seborrheic dermatitis, we are not entirely sure what exactly causes it. However, certain hypotheses have been postulated, and that ranges from fungus occurring in the oil glands of our skin. Also, it can be stress-induced, it can be genetic or hormonal factors. Environmental factors can also play a role in seborrheic dermatitis. And then lastly, also inflammatory foods or any type of irritating substances could all exacerbate symptoms of seborrheic dermatitis. With regard to myself, my issues with seborrheic dermatitis started all the way back in 2010 when I got diagnosed with ulcerative colitis. At the time, it was nothing major, didn't really notice anything at all. In January of 2015, that was really when I got my first big flare with seborrheic dermatitis, and that was when I decided to go on my vegan experiment. I ended up doing a 3-month vegan experiment in January of 2015. Those of you that have already been following me for a while, you already heard the story, so I'm not going to go too into it, but in January of 2015, I wanted to try doing the vegan diet just to see how exactly I would feel, if it would benefit me, if not. And when I did it, the first 2 weeks were great. The last 2.5 months were absolutely terrible. My health completely deteriorated. I had no mental clarity. I had no motivation, no energy. I was really bloated all the time. And I had diarrhea every single day for the last 2.5 months. Aside from that, another thing that ended up popping up was my issues with seborrheic dermatitis and also with my sinusitis. With regard to the seborrheic dermatitis, it completely enveloped my entire body, pretty much my entire chest, my entire torso. It was all red and bumpy. And then I had a lot of spots on my upper left chin and also on my face in general. So it was pretty bad during that vegan experiment. And then after the vegan diet, I did 3 months of veganism. And then from April to May of 2015, I immediately transitioned to carnivore. And within days, everything completely disappeared. I had no more issues with my digestion. My bowel movements were normal. And my seborrheic dermatitis completely went away. I had zero issues with it anymore. Then if we fast forward to January and February of this current year, 2020, so technically last year, last January and February, I decided to do another experiment on myself. And instead of doing vegan, I decided to try doing vegetarian on my non-workout days. If you recall, days 1, 2, and 4 were my workout days. Days 3 and 5 were my rest days. So on days 3 and 5, those were the days that I experimented by incorporating a vegetarian diet into my lifestyle. And the same thing happened. I got really low energy. My mental clarity was really bad. And then I was getting really bad digestive issues, and my seborrheic dermatitis came back. Same thing with the sinusitis. But seborrheic dermatitis, it was all over my chest and the rest of my torso. And again, it was on the left side of my upper lip, and it was all around my left eye as well. Those were the areas that were the most affected. And then I was originally going to do that vegetarian experiment for 3 months, but I decided to cut it short, and I cut it 1 month early, and I decided to go back onto carnivore. And within 3 to 4 days, again, everything cleared up. Sinusitis went away, and seborrheic dermatitis went away. Now, that is just for myself. Not everybody is going to be able to go on the carnivore diet and see the same results that I did. You got to find what works for you. But in terms of seborrheic dermatitis and how exactly you can manage it, there are a few things that you can do that may help. Number one is going to be reduce stress, because stress can induce symptoms of seborrheic dermatitis. So if you are really, really stressed, incorporating some stress management techniques into your lifestyle will be very, very beneficial. Now, with regard to stress, a lot of people often only think about mental stressors, but we have many different types of stressors. We have physical, mental, environmental, thermal, chemical, and also nutritional stressors. And every single one of those is going to react the same way. As far as our bodies are concerned, on a physiological level, stress is stress. It doesn't matter if you are stressed out because you are really, really stressed from work and you have a deadline due and you have to get so much stuff done by the next day, or if you are really, really stressed because you did a 5-hour cardio session that your body was incapable of handling. Stress is stress as far as your body is concerned. Now, with regard to these different stressors, I want to go over each of the different ones and how exactly you can incorporate some stress management techniques to help mitigate symptoms. The first one I want to cover is going to be physical stress. With regard to physical stress, a lot of people are either overtraining or undertraining, and either way, if you're not doing anything at all, that's going to be a stressor on your body, and if you are doing too much, that's also going to be a stressor on your body. What you want to do is work out according to your physiological stress load. I actually made a video months back, and it was talking about how hard should you train. I'm going to include a link right up over here to that video, but I go into it in a lot more detail over there. But essentially, with regard to determining your physiological stress load, the more stressed that you are, the less intense your workouts should be. Because again, when you work out, that is going to be a stress on your body. And if you are already somebody that has a really high level of physiological stress, then doing very vigorous activity will just exacerbate your symptoms with regard to stress. So if you are somebody that has a lot of stress in your life and not just physical stress, you would want to make sure that the workouts are complementing your lifestyle. If you are really, really stressed, your workouts should be fairly light until you build up a nice tolerance to doing some more vigorous activities. So doing things like Tai Chi, yoga, more relaxing type of activities, and gradually build up a tolerance to more higher demands of exercise. The next thing is going to be our mental stressors. With regard to mental stressors, this is something that a lot of people struggle with. So if you are somebody that has a lot of mental stressors in your life, whether that be from family members, friends, relationships, anything like that, you would want to do things that would help to mitigate some of your symptoms of your mental stress. So a couple things that you could do. Number one is going to be taking up a meditation practice. When I did my meditation practice, when I first started meditating, what I did was I started out slow. I started out 5 minutes and built up 5 minutes every single week. When I first started to meditate, I tried going for the 1 hour right off the bat, and it was an absolute nightmare. I could not sit there for an hour straight. So what I found, by starting out with 5 minutes and then every single week adding 5 minutes at a time, to get to 60 minutes, it was not that big of an effort by the time I actually got to there, because 5 minutes at a time was very, very manageable. So if you are looking to implement some type of stress management techniques into your lifestyle, then meditation would be an excellent way, but don't do too much all at once. Start out slow. Start out with just 5 minutes and build up 5 minutes at a time. Another thing that you could do is going to be practice some diaphragmatic breathing. This is going to be great at relieving mental stress, and it's also going to be good at alleviating symptoms of physical stress as well, because if you have an inverted breathing pattern, that is going to affect your physical body. So by incorporating diaphragmatic breathing, you can correct your breathing pattern, as most people are going to have an inverted breathing pattern, meaning they are going to breathe in the opposite of how their bodies are intended. Generally, when you breathe, you are supposed to breathe the first 2/3 of your breath from your belly, and then the last third should come from your chest. And then when you exhale, it's the opposite. The first third, your chest should collapse. The last 2/3, your stomach should collapse. We also want to breathe in 3D. We want a little bit of lateral expansion, and we want a little bit of vertical expansion toward the end of the breath. I actually made a video months back on how exactly you should be breathing and why it's important. I can include a link right up over here if you haven't seen that video, but I give you guys some exercises that you can do, some diaphragmatic breathing exercises to incorporate into your lifestyle. If you haven't seen that video, check it out, and you can incorporate some of those into your routine. The next stressor is going to be environmental stressors. With regard to seborrheic dermatitis, very cold weather or very dry weather is going to exacerbate symptoms. So if you are living in an environment where it is very, very dry constantly, then this could exacerbate symptoms of your seborrheic dermatitis. Now, with regard to the actual environment that you are in. There's not much that you could do with regard to the external environment, meaning outside, but internally in your house, you could put humidifiers in your house, you can moisturize. There are tons of different things that you could do to help with the dryness of the outside weather and also dryness on your skin. Next, we have our thermal stressors. With regard to thermal stressors, people that get seborrheic dermatitis, a lot of times cold weather is going to exacerbate symptoms. So if you do find that cold weather exacerbates your symptoms, try to bundle up a little bit, try to cover up, get a little bit warmer, as that can help. And then another thing is going to be chemical stressors. With regard to chemical stressors, a lot of people, if you are using any type of irritating substances, again, that can exacerbate symptoms of seborrheic dermatitis. So try to avoid harsh chemicals that are going to negatively react with your skin. And then lastly, it's going to be nutritional stressors. With regard to nutritional stressors, this is going to be incorporating inflammatory foods into your diet. The more inflammatory foods that you consume, the worse it's going to be, especially because seborrheic dermatitis, if you recall, itis equals inflammation. So seborrheic dermatitis is inflammation of the skin. If you are consuming foods that are inflammatory, that is going to exacerbate symptoms of inflammation on your skin. So you would want to remove inflammatory foods from your diet. Now, with regard to eliminating inflammatory foods, one of the things that's absolutely great about the carnivore diet is that it essentially acts as an elimination diet. And that is why a lot of people see benefits from it. It's not that carbs are evil and you can't consume carbs and they're going to kill you. There's nothing wrong with carbs if your body can tolerate them. However, for people that do have a lot of issues with these different conditions, removing all of those other foods can be very, very beneficial, because you're going to end up removing a lot of trigger foods that are going to cause a lot of adverse reactions just by the nature of removing all the other foods that you end up getting rid from your diet. So when a lot of people go on the carnivore diet, it's not necessarily the carnivore diet itself that ended up alleviating a lot of their symptoms with regard to seborrheic dermatitis. It's that they managed to eliminate some of the trigger foods. With regard to the carnivore diet, one of the ways in which you could use it as an elimination diet is by figuring out which foods respond the best to you. If you know that there are certain cuts of meat that you respond really well to and that don't cause any inflammation in your body, then you would want to stick to those foods for 2 to 3 weeks. The first phase, that is your elimination phase. That is when you want to stick to foods that you know are not going to cause any adverse reactions. With regard to the elimination phase, a lot of common trigger foods are going to be things like gluten, dairy, eggs, seafood, corn, soy, nuts, nightshade vegetables, and also things like pork. So when you go on the carnivore diet, obviously you are eliminating a lot of those different foods. So that could be the reason for why you are seeing your symptoms subside while on the carnivore diet. Now, when you are on the carnivore diet, you can do 2 to 3 weeks of the elimination diet by sticking to the meats that you know you respond well to. And then the reintroduction phase, that is where every 2 to 3 days you introduce one new food at a time and see how your body reacts. If your body reacts well to it and it doesn't affect you whatsoever, it's a good food for you. You can continue to eat that food. If you find that when you reintroduce a food, you end up getting symptoms like seborrheic dermatitis, then that is a bad food for you. It is causing a negative reaction in your body. You should not want to consume it. So if you are considering going on the carnivore diet as a way to heal your seborrheic dermatitis, what you can do is use the carnivore diet as an elimination diet for 2 to 3 weeks. And then if you find that it works really, really well for you, you can continue to stay on the carnivore diet, or you can reintroduce a new food every 2 to 3 days until you have a good list of foods that you enjoy and that also do not end up bringing up any symptoms with regard to your seborrheic dermatitis. But try that out for a few weeks. You can do 2 to 3 weeks of carnivore as an elimination diet, and then every 2 to 3 days, try to reintroduce a new food and try to pinpoint what exactly your trigger foods are. But that's pretty much it for today's video. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to smash that like button so I know to make more of these videos in the future. And if you're either new to the channel or haven't subscribed yet, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell, as I will be uploading new videos every single day. That's it for today's video. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you again tomorrow.